Good morning, happy Thursday, and welcome to Thrive on Thursday. I'm Nikki Hardy, and I blog over on nikkihardy.com, and I'm over on Instagram. And I really believe that life doesn't have to be pain-free to be full. That even though the storms of life come, that the full life that God has for us doesn't need to be separated from that. We don't need to say, well, when the storms are done, then I can live my abundant life again. And so if you're tuning in for the first time, just kind of say hello and say where you're coming from. It's not giving me the comments. Why isn't it giving me the comments? Yay, Amanda, I can see you. Oh, I'm so glad. So glad, because I want to be able to make this a kind of interactive, people can comment as and when that they want to chip in and stuff, because today I really want us to wrestle with, why does God allow suffering? And this is a time where we come as we are, just as we are, no makeup, no fuss, just us. And as you can see, I just got out of the shower. My hair is all scraped back and wet. And last week, if you tried tuning in, I wasn't here because I was in the mountains with my husband, and in a rare act of kind of spontaneity, I got my hair cut, and I actually got what I would call a fringe, what you guys call bangs. I know my American accent's terrible, and so because it's wet, I've kind of tried to pin the back. So this really is a come as you are, but so I wanted just for us to think about. Oh, and hi, Deb. Yay! I'm so glad you joined us as well. I'm just trying to make this as interactive and just make a space for us to kind of hi bangs to you too, so that we can wrestle with this question, because it's a question that is asked so much, and with the events that have been happening recently with Las Vegas and the hurricanes and all sorts of terrible things. There are fires, and that's just in the US. And I want to read you something that Time magazine said. If you could see grief on a map, there would be rings of anguish radiating from whole regions of the US right now. No state would remain untouched by the events of 2017. And I just thought that was such a lovely visual of these rings of grief just kind of seeping out over the US. And I really think that it doesn't stop at the US. There are rings of grief radiating out from every continent. There isn't a place untouched by pain and suffering and heartache. And you might have heard of a chap called Lee Strobel. He's the guy who wrote The Case for Christ, and it's just come out in a film, which I can't wait to see. But he commissioned a survey. Bye Amanda, I have a meeting, we'll jump back. That's fine. Lee Strobel commissioned a survey to ask people what is the one question they would ask God if they could. If they came to him face to face, what is the one question that they would ask him? And unanimously, we would all ask the same question. We would all ask, why do you allow suffering? Why do you allow suffering? If you are good, why do you allow suffering? And none of us is untouched by pain and suffering and heartache and loss, whether it's cancer like mine, loss of loved ones like me, losing my mum and my sister, to, for bankruptcy or abuse. I've got a friend, Becky, who lost her husband when she was 8 months pregnant with her second. I've got a friend, Todd, who lives on about 7 to 8 on a 10 scale, pain scale, where 10 is shoot me now. 7 to 8 is kind of his average day. I mean, just incredible what he lives through. Another friend, Grace, who's going to be sharing on the blog next week. She is in her mid-20s. She's had 5 brain surgeries with these tumours that just keep growing in her brain. And so there's that kind of suffering that we're living through. And then there's the kind of, I don't want to say everyday suffering, because that almost minimises it. But, financial worries, teenagers breaking curfew. Not that mine ever do that. My children are perfect, not. You know, but worrying things, you know, a child getting diagnosed with something, you know, whatever it is. And so we'd say, God, why? Why do you allow this? Hi, Kathy, I'm so glad you're here. And so, yes, we would all ask this same question. And I wish that, you know, I could say, guys, I've done the research, I've done the theology, and I can give you 5 reasons why God allows suffering. And everyone's going to go, oh, why didn't you tell me? Now I don't need to ask anymore. Now, you know, I can go on, I can live my life, I can press in during the hard seasons, and, you know, I'll have no more worries about it all. But I just don't think it works like that. I mean, I've got some suggestions and I've got some reasons, but actually I wonder whether we're asking the wrong questions. And for those of you that have just joined, we're talking about suffering. Why does God allow it? And the fact that it's the number one question we all want to ask if we were to come face to face with God. And Lee Strobel commissioned that survey that found that result, and he's also written a great article. I'm actually going to post this on the blog tomorrow. If you want to make sure you get it, make sure you sign up, nikkihardy.com. And one of the reasons I'm really wrestling with this at the moment is not this coming Sunday, but the following Sunday. I'm actually talking about this in church. We're doing a series on apologetics and digging into all things and, you know, really interrogating our faith. And this is what I'm speaking on. So it's kind of a hot topic for me. But so, yes, I really wish I could give us this 5 points and we're all going to be tickety-boo and never worry about it again. But I can tell you some of the things that we do know about God and suffering. The first is that we and the world are broken and fallen. And, you know, yes, God is sovereign, but this doesn't mean that he is the direct agent of pain and suffering. Our pastor, John Peters in London, he said, you know, he gave a great example, which is if you put him in charge of a room full of children. Now he is in charge, but if one child turns around and slaps the other, you can't really blame him for that. And in the same way, you know, God created a perfect world with no suffering. You know, it tells us that in Genesis, and we messed it up and we rejected him. And this allowed evil and sin to enter the world, and then pain hot on the heels of that. And so I often think that, you know, I know when I had cancer, it felt like God was doing it to me. You know, why are you doing this to me, God? Or even just the sense of why are you allowing it? It felt like, well, that's semantics, really. If he's allowing it, he's doing it to me, you know. But really, when we're talking about pain and suffering that's either a direct result of our own choices, you know, if we're a drug addict or we've smoked all our life and we get lung cancer, or if it's the result of somebody else's choice and it's obvious. But ultimately, you know, the Bible tells us that the world groans and aches, and it has just fallen. And so we live in a fallen and broken world, and we're just going to hurt each other and hurt ourselves, unfortunately. And so is this kind of disjointed, broken world. So that's the first thing we need to kind of hold in tension when we are thinking about God and suffering. The second thing is that God isn't punishing or testing us. And I know it can feel like that, you know, with my teenagers, you know, when they feel the natural consequences of their actions, it feels like punishment, but we are just allowing them to feel the consequences of the choices that they have made. And, you know, we can't, when we do that, we can't assume that it's God punishing us. And, even when our pain and our suffering isn't obviously a direct result of our own choices, God isn't punishing us because he has already doled out the punishment for all our sins, if you want to call it that word. I just don't like that word, but I think it's just got a bad rap. It's a small 3-letter word with I in the middle. It's normally a self-focused thing, isn't it? But the choices we make, the stuff that we do, the way we hurt each other and hurt ourselves, the way we're mean or the way we do all these things, he has already doled out the punishment. And it is not the suffering you're going through. It is not the pain that you're feeling right now. He dealt out the punishment and Jesus paid the price of it. You know, we live on the resurrection side of Easter, which means that, you know, the cross is redemptive. Suffering isn't redemptive. Good things come out of it, and I'll get onto that in a little while. But it's not punishment, even though it can feel like it. I know it can feel like it. It does feel like, God, why are you doing this to me? What have I done? You know, we immediately want to fix it. We immediately want to say, you know, how can I stop this? Do I need to apologize? Do I need to repent? What do I need to do? But it's not a test and it's not a punishment, folks. The third thing is that God does bring about good out of our pain. You know, if there's going to be pain and suffering, then I'm so glad that good does come out of it. I'm so glad God, in his ridiculously abundant love for us, brings good out of it. And so often we can't see it in the depth of our ache and our pain. But when we look, we can, I kind of think of it as two different types of goodness that comes out. You know, Romans 8. I'm going to get my Bible verses all mixed up. But when Paul says God uses all things for the good of those that love him. I think there's a kind of, we see it in hindsight. Now that I'm out of that situation, wow, I can see the way God has used it to better my life. But I think there's also a finding goodness in the pain. So in the rubble, there are rubies, as I like to say, and we can find them. And that's the business of finding abundant life in the pain and the suffering. So, and do comment if you think, yes, I agree with that, no, I don't agree with that, or this is what happened to me. Do just throw in a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because this isn't a definitive guide by Nikki Hardy that will solve the world's questions about God and suffering. It's a kind of collective work, and I have drawn quite heavily from Lee Strobel. I found his article really, really helpful. So the first three, I can't count, first three, we in the world are broken. Secondly, God isn't punishing or testing us. Third is that he uses it for good. The good comes out of our pain. And the fourth thing is that this life isn't all there is. And I know it's hard to think about that. I know it's hard to think, well, I don't want to keep thinking about, oh, well, it'll be all right when I get to heaven. Although Paul does say, doesn't it, you know, it would be wonderful to die, but I'm going to stay. But, you know, to gain is to die kind of thing. But that, to me, gives us a spark of hope. And that hope, I think it's Christopher Reeve said, when we have hope, anything is possible. And, you know, here's a guy that played Superman and then was a quadriplegic. And I think when we have that vision of the enormity of the joy that's to come, however painful life is right now, however difficult, however great our loss, the abundance that is to come is going to be so enormous. And not that we can say, well, therefore I can endure anything, but it just gives me hope. And it knows that I am loved, and it knows that I am seen and I'm cared for, those kinds of things. Hope is really powerful. Deb, what are you saying? Is it also that we expect too much from this life? Ooh, maybe. Do we? Do we expect too much from this life? I'm going to have to think about that, Deb. I think there's an element of truth in it that, are you saying that you think maybe what with Facebook and all this thing, we expect life to be perfect, for life to be kind of airbrushed and pain-free, and that we've been sold a myth, because I definitely believe that. So yes, I think I agree with you on that one. Yes, maybe we've kind of bought into this lie that if we've done something wrong. And if you look kind of historically, biblically, and the people of the Bible and how they viewed suffering, you know, in the Old Testament, originally, it was like, well, if you are sinless, if you don't mess up, then God will bless you. If you are wicked, the wicked get destroyed. And then we have the book of Job, where Job's going, no, hold on a minute. I have been righteous. I have not done anything wrong. And his mates are going, well, you must have done, because this is how the world works. And he's going, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. And therefore, we then get into kind of Ecclesiastes, where it's like, well, therefore, everything's meaningless. If these rules don't apply, everything must be meaningless. And then we come through to the New Testament and Jesus and his suffering on the cross for us and the redemption through it. So there's kind of linear transformation of our thinking about it, if you like. Gosh, my bangs really are going bananas, aren't they? Okay, never mind. Deb, we have been programmed by Hollywood that this life should be happy skippy all the time. I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree with that. And if there is pain and suffering, then it's all going to end happily after. Yeah, I totally agree with that. If you're going to take a bite of the apple, then you'll sleep for a while, but then you're going to be woken up by a prince. I definitely see that. And if our real life doesn't match up with the Hollywood version, we feel disappointed. Oh my goodness, yes. And we feel cheated, and we feel like somebody's doing it to us and we are the victim. I completely agree with that. Completely agree with that. Okay, so this life isn't all that there is, and that creates hope. And we know that, I love this expression, we expect cake on our plate while we wait, but there's pie in the sky when we die, guys. So I just love that. That's a fantastic way of thinking about it. But when we have that hope, we can really press into it. And then we get mad at God. Yes, Deb, I completely agree. We get mad at God when things don't work out Hollywood style. Okay, and the good news is, the last thing is that God doesn't leave us in our pain. So when our world shatters, I think that we feel alone, that we feel that nobody cares, that even if we've got people around us, and finding community is super, super important, I was the only one that was feeling what I was feeling when I was going through cancer. When I lost my sister, although my other sister lost her sister too, I was the only one feeling my pain. I was the only one inside my headspace. And we feel kind of alone, and we feel like God's kind of packed his bags and is going to be back when we've got our life back together, which of course is bonkers, but that's how we feel, don't we? And we feel like, just alone, and we feel lonely and overwhelmed, and that we have to get our crap together, and then everything will be all right, and God will come back, and then we can have our friends again, etc. But the good news is that God doesn't leave us, and he doesn't abandon us, and he says that he will be with us in our pain. He says that he's going to comfort us, and he will never leave us or forsake us, that he will give us his peace and even his joy. And that's what a lot of the stuff I write about is. Hi Bobby, I'm so glad you've joined. Look at my terrible bangs. Anyway, I've got to stop talking about them. I'm trying to hold them up while my hair is drying in this dreadful post-shower bun. We're talking about suffering. And I'm just saying that we're talking about God. Why does God allow suffering? And we're on our fifth point, that is about God not leaving us in our pain. And I'm just looking at some of my notes here. You know, it really is utter rubbish that it's not utter rubbish that we feel that, because our feelings are our feelings and they're valid. But the logic behind them is flawed. And, he came to give us abundant life, and he's not going to leave us while we try and figure that out. So I really believe that we can dig for the rubies in the rubble. He's there to help us do that. And so with all these things, so we've been through, these are just 5 things we know about God and suffering, because we all want to know, don't we? God, why do you allow suffering? We in the world are broken. God isn't testing us or punishing us, because we live on the resurrection side of Easter. Any punishment has been doled out and paid for already, which is great news. We might be feeling the natural consequences of our actions or somebody else's actions, but it's not a test and it's not punishment. Good things do come out of pain. Even if we can't see it immediately, they really do. And that this life isn't all that there is. There's cake on our plate while we wait, and pie in the sky when we die, guys. Yes! And so that's good news, and that feeds us with hope. And with hope, we can endure anything. And then the last thing is that God doesn't leave us in pain. He comes to us, he is with us, and even though we feel alone, we are not alone, and we can grasp hold of him, which is fantastic. And I was thinking about it, these 5 things are all really good kind of logical things to think about, but God forbid, they are not things to tell someone who's just been diagnosed with cancer or who's just lost a loved one. We don't say, well, the world's broken. Oh, I'm so sorry. The world's broken, but he does use it for good. But don't worry, he's not testing you. And there is going to be joy in heaven. You know, of course, I know you wouldn't say that, but people do. People do. So when we're talking to people who are going through deep tragedy and things, we just want people to sit with us and say, yes, it stinks, yes, it's painful, and just hold us and sit in the mess and not give these reasons. So yes, these are really helpful, but they're not reasons to give people when something bad has happened. And if you go to my blog and you subscribe and all that kind of stuff, you'll find great things to help people when they are going through something. And my friend Marissa Henley has written a great book, How to Love Someone Going Through Cancer, and she's actually bringing out a fresh edition soon. So if you want that, that's really great. But I think with all these things, it made me think maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe the question isn't, God, why do you allow suffering? Or why does God allow suffering? But what am I going to do in my suffering? Which way am I going to turn? We feel like we don't have a choice, but we do. And no choice is a choice, as in so many things. Not choosing to make a decision is actually making a decision. Are we going to turn towards God in our pain, or are we going to turn away from him? And that's the choice we need to make. That's the choice. That's the question we need to be asking ourselves. And it's not easy to turn towards God, but it's easier when we bear these things in mind. That he's not punishing us, that he's not testing us, that he hasn't abandoned us, that it's not necessarily our fault. All these kinds of things, that the world is broken, but that he loves us and the punishment has been paid. When we can hold on to all of this, it's easier to say, okay, yes, Daddy, you know, raising our arms up like a little kid. Or we can say, no, I'm turning away. I don't want anything to do with it. But I just want to encourage you all to just turn towards God in our pain. You know, that's the question, or is it? To turn or not to turn? That is the question. So guys, thank you for joining us. Do comment afterwards. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear where you're at, any other reasons that you've thought of, or any great books that you can share that have really helped you in your journey. And like I said, if you want to get, I've got lots of resources on my website that you can download that will help you turn towards God. I've got a talk about thriving in the storms. There's my 7 tools for finding abundant life in the mess, for digging out those rubies in the rubble. There's a devotion, there's an ebook on hearing God's voice. And if you want all of that, you're welcome to it, and it's all there for you. You just need to throw in your email and you should get it sent to you. I think you have to confirm your email to make sure you're not a robot or something like that. But it's all there for you. And I would love for you to be able to use those tools to decide, okay, I don't have all the answers, God, but I'm going to turn towards you, not away from you. I'm going to press in, not walk away. So until next week, guys. Oh, and I've been thinking in November, I think I'm going to run another little Instagram kind of thingy. An Instagram where you post every day about thriving and stuff. So come and follow me on Instagram, Nikki.Hardy, that's Niki, so that you don't miss out on that. I'd love to see you. And maybe one day I'll try and show you what this is all about, but not today. All right, guys, do comment and do share and all those good things, because if I'm ever going to get a book published, I need as many people as possible. So I know, I'm just being honest. I want to help as many people as possible. It's not about getting a book published. It's about, let's see how many people we can help to turn towards God and find him and get that hope and that abundant life, no matter what life has thrown at us. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Wouldn't that be amazing, guys? All right, well, I'm going to say goodbye, and I will see you same time next week, Thrive on Thursday, and I'll see you over on the blog and Instagram. Do download everything you need. Take care, bye.